pleasure to be here today. Again, shortly, my name is Paul. I'm the CEO of a Swiss startup, and we're making multi-layer battery electrodes a reality. And I'll skip the intro slide because I think everybody can agree on that, on the relevance of battery technology for a renewable energy future. And in short, and feel free to interrupt at any point with questions. I'm going to leave some time for the end as well for Q&A. But our mission is to develop a manufacturing platform that unlocks the mass production of next generation batteries. And what I mean by all these words is that we believe that slot die coating, single layer or double layer, is not flexible enough to cover all the production requirements and performance requirements of battery electrodes at the same time. What you really want is a technology that can address, scale-up speeds, high volume production speeds, and address those requirements without compromising on performance. And ultimately, we believe this can only be done when you divide your electrodes into multiple sublayers. A short video of the process. What we mean by multi-layer curtain coating is essentially you go away from slot die and you lift your coating die away from the substrate, and you can create a free-falling curtain that is held up between those edge guides and then hits the substrate with a certain pressure. And the beauty is that this can not only work with a singular sheet or a singular material, you can combine multiple materials. It can be, variants of the same material, different sized particles of cathodes or anodes, but you can also include different type of materials. Say you want to include a primer layer or even solid electrolytes. All that is feasible with the right design and process know-how. And essentially the all-electric economy or the electrification of everything is a great opportunity for us, for startups, but also for incumbents to rethink existing processes. While performance and cost has come down rapidly, we still use slot die coating as the state of the art for the most part of all battery electrodes. And we think multi-layer curtain coating is much more suited to the requirements because we actually took inspiration from other industries, the paper industry, the packaging industry, the photographic film industry, all these industries who are producing, low-cost, high-volume products with similar properties. So we think you should turn to those and learn, and that's exactly what we do. And this allows us to tune properties and production processes towards specific applications. And the tunability and the flexibility of our process allows us, to address different needs. EVs have different requirements than storage batteries. The energy density for trucking or cost or lifetime for trucking and power tools are different. And I think this tailoring of battery performance towards use cases allows us to be much more efficient in the usage of materials in the specific load cases. And if we look at the manufacturing process of lithium-ion batteries, going from powder to cells, we see electrode manufacturing as a common factor and the most central part of a factory. So I think any electrode, for that matter, is really the heart and soul of a battery. Granted, there's a lot of complex interplays between electrolytes, current collectors, pressure, and such. But really, you define the overall properties with regard to energy density, charging lifetime, or even recyclability when you design your electrode. So we come up with this multi-layer approach as a drop-in solution for existing factories. We want to upgrade existing factories, going from single or double layer slot die towards triple, quadruple, or 5-layer battery designs to ultimately cut costs and improve performance. But in a nutshell, the electrode manufacturing process is the most critical step in the value chain of making a battery, in our opinion. And instead of depositing one layer at a time, this multi-layer curtain coating allows us to address production requirements and performance requirements separately. This is what we've developed from lab scale, university, PhD programs, all the way to pilot trials at over 300 meters per minute of coating speeds. And if you go head-to-head comparison, 80 meters per minute, maybe even 100 meters per minute is probably a gold standard for today's slot die. We can go much faster. We can be much more versatile. We're actually also not limited by coating width, assuming you can get large scale or wide current collectors. We don't need to have a precise gap control between backing rollers and slot die. Our curtain allows us to go even to coating widths of over 4 meters. And ultimately, in a head-to-head comparison, our platform, our technology platform, is way more versatile. And now what I've brought today is actually 3 examples of 3 different kind of products, also 3 different kind of electrodes along the TRL level. You have the LFP cathodes that are, very much state-of-the-art, growing, really fast-growing chemistry, low-cost chemistry. You have silicon anodes, sort of as a lever for high energy density cells in the near future. And you have solid-state electrode designs. And I wanted to share examples of what we do and how we create value for these different applications, to mainly showcase the versatility of our coating technology and what kind of value mechanisms we can bring. So if you look at cathodes, and I think the problem with LFP cathodes is particularly prominent. LFP having a rather low volumetric energy density, LFP electrodes are usually quite thick. If you look at loadings at 3 milliamp hours per square centimeters, or even 4 and 5 and 6 milliamp hours per square centimeters, you're talking about electrode thicknesses way thicker than 100 microns, 150 even. And that means ultimately you run into transport limitations. You can make the same argument for graphite anodes for fast charging applications, but ultimately the value mechanism is about overcoming transport limitations. Now, what kind of transport am I talking about? It's solid-state transport, so ionic transport within your active material particles, but also liquid-state transport in the electrolyte. So when you talk about C rates of 1C, 2C, or even 5C at those thicknesses, you run into significant capacity loss during your cycles. And in order to, have access or keep access to all of your active material, all of the stored lithium, we need to manage transport by controlling particle sizes across the thickness of the electrode. We can put small particles where they need to be. We can take large particles where they need to be when they're not solid-state transport limited. We can combine them at the right places to tune porosity and ultimately control the liquid-state transport. And what we also allow cell manufacturers and end users to do is to tune the amount of carbon additives to tune electrical transport and minimize the usage of any inactive material. So what does that look like? As an example here, this is a triple layer exemplary electrode where we demonstrate to cell manufacturers and customers that we can coat thick layers on top of thin ones. You can imagine the bottom layer right next to the current collector, for example, as a primer layer. We can coat large particles and small particles on top of each other, whichever direction you like. And keep in mind, those 3 layers are all coated at the same time, simultaneously. So we don't need to do sequential coatings that artificially increases production time and cost. We do these mechanisms at the same time in one go. And ultimately, we believe this is a tool for cell designers and manufacturers alike to really get the most out of your materials, cut costs in production, but remain competitive with high-performance designs. The second example that I wanted to give was actually the one that we started with. And the simple reason why we did it was, if we move towards higher and higher silicon anodes, even 50, 60, 70, 8% of silicon content, the specific capacity is much, much higher in storage. So if you talk about target designs with 3, 4, 5 milliamp hours per square centimeter in terms of loading, your target electrode thickness becomes relatively low, maybe 30, 40 microns. If you have a good quality material with silicon anodes, that means your current coating line is actually underutilized. With that kind of loading, you can actually increase coating speeds a lot. You have an existing dryer length that was meant to handle wet loadings of maybe 200-300 grams per square meter. Now with an increased capacity material, you only have to handle 100 grams, so you can increase coating speed. And this is where the curtain part of the multi-layer curtain coating actually comes into play, because the curtain, as I mentioned in the very beginning, actually has a pressure impact once it hits the substrate. And that pressure hitting the substrate allows you to go to coating speeds much higher than 200 meters per minute. And today, actually, I brought a video of our pilot trials here, where we deposited a silicon anode at 250 meters per minute coating speed. It was actually a triple layer fashion to work around production requirements. And you can see the process here live in action. You have the multi-layer curtain die, 3 layers of the same material being deposited, and I believe this video is actually at 250 meters per minute. And what I wanted to share that with you today is also to show that our process is highly scalable. So with our pilot line, we can actually run coating speeds up to multiple hundreds of meters per minute with relatively little amount of material. So when you scale up your process or your product, your electrode design, we're actually the right partner to do it, because we can do it with the minimal effort. Within a day of our coating line, with a well-prepared recipe and materials, we can get you the process parameters that can actually be converted neatly into the Gigafactory. Now, last but not least, I also promised I'll share some insights on how we think about solid-state batteries. They are a beast of their own. They have multiple tricky challenges. But to sum it up, I believe that solid-state batteries and scaling solid-state batteries in particular is about managing interfaces between different kinds of materials and the corresponding layer thicknesses. And why is that the case? Well, essentially, it's about electrochemical stability. Where in your layup do you have actually the material that is stable when in contact with lithium metal? Do you have the right interface to enable uniform plating and stripping towards lithium metal? Is your material robust enough to be handled mechanically? Can you wind it? Can you roll it? Does it hold up under tension? And at the same time, you want to maximize active material and energy density and minimize material cost. So all these have, to a degree, contradictory requirements. And we think it's a very neat approach if you don't have to fulfill all these criteria in one layer, in one type of material. So you can optimize for mechanical integrity with a different layer than the one that is in direct contact with the lithium metal. And the way we see that, I also brought an example here, is actually a 5-layer battery design, all deposited simultaneously at the same time, 5 layers on top of one another, where you can see different kinds of materials and layer designs. So within those layer package, we actually have, a layer that resembles a primer layer with 3 micron in thickness at the very interface to the current collector, larger spherical particles, but also a triple layer near what would be the lithium metal or separator interface, with really, really thin layer thicknesses, 4, 9, and 4 microns. And again, keep in mind, all these have been deposited at the same time on one coating line in one go. All right, and I think these are 3 examples that I wanted to share with you today on how multi-layer curtain coating addresses production and performance requirements. There's many, many more value mechanisms that we can provide. And ultimately, if you zoom out and take the perspective, okay, well, what kind of company are we anyway? We see ourselves as a technology provider, as a process provider that bridges the gap between cell manufacturers and equipment manufacturers. Very often, there's a gap. We see it with Northvolt, but also in other companies, that a cell manufacturer doesn't necessarily have the equipment know-how to optimize their processes. But on the other hand, the equipment manufacturer really doesn't know anything about electrochemistry or materials design. And I think with our knowledge, we can bridge that gap. We have both. We provide upgrade solutions to existing lines, includes a piece of hardware and the process know-how to cut costs and improve cell performance by making very little adjustment to the rest of the factory. I brought here a rather, large summary of why cell manufacturers and customers choose to work with us. We work with automotive companies as well as cell manufacturers, but essentially it's in 2 pillars. And I mentioned those a bunch of times now. It's about saving costs and improving performance. And how do we save costs? Well, there's the CapEx angle and the OpEx angle, and you can argue which one is more important, but I think it's always great if you can tackle both. Regarding CapEx, we essentially believe we can get the same output, or we can get double the output on on the same line. So our coating speed can be much higher. We increase the OpEx a little, but per output, we decrease OpEx. With our multi-layer approach, we can tune for drying parameters, optimize for energy consumption during drying to alleviate any issues with adhesion or binder distribution. We can coat wider and save factory space. So there's a lot of cost angles that we play and that we bring to the table. And regarding performance, the coating window, the coating parameters of our technology is so wide that we believe we can coat thicker without any defects because of optimized drying and deposition weights. We can include primer layers to save on raw material costs into the coating process. We can improve adhesion towards the current collector and improve cycle life. all these kind of value propositions we develop proof points for with customers. And ultimately, it's about working closely in the design phase and scaling it up all the way during production. The way we do it as a startup, we're less than 2 years old. We do pilot projects. We demonstrate our capabilities with cell manufacturers and OEMs, and ultimately then we provide two options. Either they choose to in-house our solution, which is essentially the upgrade solution with a servitized approach. We make sure that it's up and running as quickly as possible and the upsides are actually there in terms of cost and performance. Or we also offer contract manufacturing for scale-up purposes, niche products in-house, where we take care of the electrode manufacturing and work with other partners to then assemble full cells. This is how we do business, how we intend to grow our company. And so at any time, if relevant to your company, reach out. We can set up a project. We can show how we create value for you. And we is our team of 10 people. We actually have 6 PhDs. So we're a really strong technical team. We have the production expertise from the photographic film industry. We have talent from Northvolt, TU Delft, TU Munich. We have excellent advisors from BMW and 1,5 storage company. And we built on 5 patents and patent applications. And we believe we can add value if you intend to build and design cells that are cost effective and highly performant. With that, I would like to open the floor for questions, comments, regards, remarks, or any advice. Feedback is always welcome.
I have a question. I have a doubt actually. Thank you. Nice presentation.
Thank you, Sergi. Good to see you again.
Actually, my doubt is, what is the capacity retention? How much cycling stability for this? Because directly you are coating layer by layer without any addition nature, or how much it is.
I'm not sure. So cycle life depends a lot on the product, right? LFP electrodes are much better than the silicon anodes that we tried. I don't think our silicon anodes are at commercial quality yet, because there's much more than just the coating technology, but also good material. We work with metallurgical silicon SiOX. We get a few hundred cycles out of those types of silicon anodes, but it really depends then on the specific material combination and layups.
Yeah, because here most of the people using for the sputtering some physical vapor deposition techniques like that for multi layers, but you are using for a simple technique, a low cost technique. It is very interesting. Then why we some other people prefer for a physical vapor or high cost deposition techniques than this?
So I'll try to repeat the question. I'm not sure if I got it right, but it's the question,
so many people, if working multi layers, they are working physical vapor deposition techniques by using for multi layers. Yeah, but you are using for a simple technique, low cost. Why people are prefer for that physical vapor deposition techniques than this? I didn't understand.
So I can only guess here, but I believe with physical vapor deposition you have access to even lower film thicknesses So I think nanometer-sized thicknesses with PVD is feasible. And I do have to admit that there's a certain hurdle in using our approach, because multi-layers means also you mix your materials, and after your trials, these layers are mixed. So you need to be able to come with a lot of material when compared to PVD processes. So our smallest samples is always sheets, A4 sized sheets, but ultimately it's a roll-to-roll process that is not that common in academia, I would say. So that's certainly one aspect, but for us it was a strategic choice to go with liquid film processes similar that slot die does. So we aim to use the same slurries and materials that I use today, but apply them in a multi-layer fashion.
Hey, Paul.
Yeah,
Paul,
nice. Nice. Thank you.
Hi, can I ask somebody else? Because, anyways, I can go ahead. Just a question. Thank you. Nice presentation. Do you guys use this kind of a multi-layer coating both for anodes and cathodes, or is it only specific for anode material?
So the short question is we use it for every kind of material. Our requirement is that it's slurry-based processing. So we prefer to work with water. We can scale that much faster, iterate much quicker with lower infrastructure requirements. But we'd be happy to scale any type of solvents and slurries also in a dry room.
In a dry room. So that's a required. But then another question, just quickly. So considering the same system, let's assume a silicon graphite anode slurry that you are processing with a multi-layer coating. So it's the same system, and compare that to, let's say, a single layer coating, the normal that we do with a slot die. What level of improvement can we typically expect in key metrics like cycle life, initial capacity, rate performance? I mean, can you put a number on that? Assuming a similar system, but just like a direct comparison between single layer and, let's say, multi-layer coatings.
So you're touching on a really good point here, because for us, we need to work with customer benchmarks, right? There's a lot of material engineering also in slot die. And then it's a question, what do you want to achieve with multi-layer? Is it improved adhesion? Then we would add, a subsection, a sub-layer with increased binder content, for example. When you can also talk about ideas like pre-lithiation layers, where you have
No,
some
but
sort
if
of
I'm asking as a
separation.
customer, I want a 5C rate performance or 6C rate performance. So my current single layer battery is giving me, let's say, 3C performance. I want to improve that by 2C more.
Yeah.
Do you think your multi-layer coating is going to do that for me, assuming same material
Yeah.
system? Of course, yeah.
Yeah, that is a yes, because then we would assess, okay, what is your current electrode design limited by? Is it electronic transport, ionic transport, or particle diffusion or ionic diffusion within your particles? And then we would come up with a layup that alleviates that limiting factor. Then that means maybe introducing a second type of particle size. That might mean introducing more or less conductive additive at a specific position in your electrode thickness. But then it depends on, what kind of materials you're using. But
Yeah, but I mean, as I said,
is,
if I'm not going to change the material, sorry for interruption, because there are other people waiting, so I just want to wrap it up. But if I'm not changing the materials, then I believe your system should be helping me with your design, your layout design, because that's what I'm thinking. Because if I want to get to that performance metric because of choice of materials, then that's a different story, because that I can also do in a single layer coating, right?
Latif, their specialization here is on the manufacturing process to make the multiple layers more efficiently. How you do your gradient on your electrode is a matter of design. And what he's saying is that he works with the individual companies and they have a base design, and using a gradient electrode gives you performance benefits. Exactly which benefits you get depends on the design, and each customer will have a different baseline and a different objective. And they will vary the thickness, the number of coatings, and the particle size to achieve that. But he can't give you a straight answer. because he doesn't know what your baseline is and what you're trying to achieve.
Okay, understood. Thank you very much. Thanks.
Yeah, sorry to interject, but I think that Atif was quite straight to the point. What Atif is asking, and I am asking him the same, if you have comparative data between like single layer, same material, single layer, same material, multi-layer.
What you're asking is whether gradient electrode gives you better performance than a single coating.
Yeah, like the multi-size electrodes similar to what Empower does.
It's very much similar to what Empower does for the anode side, right? The way I understand Empower's technology is, optimizing for ion transport across a graphite anode, and that by choosing different types of particles, different type of degrees of porosities, and we do that too, but with an even larger degree of freedom. So we can include your primer layer, we can improve. We can include even a blocking layer for safety.
We are fascinated with the coating technology, but we would like to know if you have at least any internal comparative results in any performance metrics, cycle life, power density, energy density.
Yeah.
So this is something that we are working on. We have been focusing on coding metrics, uniformity, 1% weight accuracy, coding speeds, and solid contents, 60 weight percent and plus, rheology, 20 Pascal seconds or higher. And the performance improvements is mostly with customers, but we are working on our internal data as well.
Paul, you mentioned that you sit in between the manufacturers, the equipment manufacturers, and your customers in a way. Which manufacturers have you worked with for this?
So we are talking and discussing with Chinese manufacturers, Korean manufacturers, and European ones.
Okay. You mentioned at the beginning that this curtain coating is a well-known technology, and you mentioned paper and some other industries. Also, you have an experience in film, so I agree with you in that. But in the low-cost, high-volume markets, one key difference between that and the battery industry is quality control and the narrowness, shall we say, of the specification requirements for thickness control and edge control in your coating. It's actually quite severe in batteries compared to, say, paper coatings. So what pushback have you had from your customers so far in terms of managing the quality issues, thickness control, or the other mixing, for example, between the layers that you would having to deal with? How are you handling that?
So the most question marks were actually around solid content and rheology. And I think this is where were able to demonstrate up to 68% solids for LFP-based slurries, and rheology is up to 20 Pascal seconds at the shear rate of mu0 at 1/2 shear rates. Regarding quality, we actually work with a die manufacturer. So two-part answer to the quality question. The first pilots regarding quality and uniformity, we are able to match slot die qualities, 1% weight accuracies in terms of uniformity. 1% is where we stand. It depends on the material, but I think this is where we have a good benchmark, where we meet the benchmark. And the die manufacturer that we work with, I wanted to give one example from the packaging industry, where target was 20 micron film for barrier films. And they are within 0.5 micron of that accuracy. And the films that I showed you, actually, these are uncalendared film. So these cross sections and uniformities, they come straight out of the coding. So for any kind of product, it needs to be optimized. But I think for the development speed that we do, it's acceptable, and that's also the feedback from our pilot partners as of today.
Good. Are you working with TSE Troller by any chance?
Yeah.
Okay.
I had a question just on the limits of like, I assume there's some interplay between the film speed and the thickness. Could you maybe talk about the limits in terms of like at your top speed, what thickness you're at, and then maybe top thickness, what speed you're at?
Absolutely, a great question. It's a pre-metered process. So volume flow and web speed determines your thickness, just like with slot. We went all the way down to 30 meters per minute with film thicknesses, dry film thicknesses of around 100 to 150 microns. And at the upper end, the 350 meters per minute speeds for the silicon anodes were dry thicknesses of 20 microns.
Okay.
So if that gives you a range expectation.
Yeah. Thank you.
I had a very simple question, just regarding, I guess, how much this is kind of a drop-in solution, because I know you're trying to be at the interface between like cell manufacturers and equipment makers. What's the, does your process affect the drying plane or any of these other considerations? Because you're recording these very high coding speeds, but I'm curious to know how that translates into maybe existing equipment, or if you have to modify that equipment, and maybe how invasive that modification is.
A very good question, and we get that question a lot, actually. Obviously, if you go to multiple hundreds of meters of deposition speeds, then you also have to have the dryer for it. We think we can improve drying with our multilayer to minimize dwelling times, but ultimately that's the second part of our approach. I mentioned earlier we use the same solid contents, the same rheology, to also work with existing slurries all the way down to 30 meters per minute. So for a given production scale, production line, this should be drop-in compatible. And then it's about optimizing process. Does it make sense to increase width or length? Is it worth the extra investment if you can significantly improve your coding speed?
I see. Okay, thank you.
My question is kind of an add-on to Eric's comments. And so I know as far as quality control, are you actually measuring anything during the production and feeding that back into your process at all? Or is the quality assurance and quality control that you're achieving based off of just kind of taking samples later on?
So right now we're taking samples. We don't have the facility to do inline measurements. And I mean, we'd love to do it. We'd love to find the right partner to do also inline measurements. We do have our own pilot line coming up that we're installing April next year. And that would be a great opportunity also to implement the feedback system.
Okay.
That's a great input.
Where I'm working in is using terahertz radiation measurements to for this, which is capable of measuring multi-layer coatings. We can measure the density, we can measure the loading, we can measure conductance, a few different parameters. So there's probably some synergy where what you're looking at wanting to probably feed back in would be something that is very interesting to us.
Yeah, that sounds definitely like synergy, like an overlap. I'd love to learn more. I'll be reaching out.
Okay. Yes.
Hey, Can I ask my question?
Hi, Alyssa, of course.
Oh, hi. Yeah, so maybe it's like kind of a dumb question because I'm not very familiar with with this curtain coating, but it looks really cool. It looks like a waterfall, right? Kind of like cascading down onto the sheet. I was just curious, like because you guys are kind of like all about low cost, right? Does that slurry that like doesn't hit the sheet or like that runs off the sheet, like do you collect it and then recycle? Does it get recycled or is it like considered like contaminated because it is already or something like that? Like, do you recycle that material or?
So for pilots or lab scale and trials, we don't. It would certainly make sense for high cost materials, but also during production, the ramp up, the establishing of the curtain can be relatively quick with compared to the length of a copper foil substrate.
Because I thought it could help lower your cost if you just like collected that and then.
Everyone.
It certainly will.
Good to see everyone. We're joining everyone back in the main room. I'll
Thank
post a link. There'll be more time for questions and discussion after for open forum. But yeah, we'll love to see you in the main room. See you guys soon. I posted a link in the chat.
Wait a second, main room doesn't work.
I have a main room chat that has a closing announcements, so it'll be at the very end of the programming.
Okay. Well, in any case, reach out if you have questions. Reach out if you're interested to learn more when you talk about design, when you talk about production. Thank you for joining the session, and reach out also in case of questions, doubts, or anything else. Thank you so much, guys.